Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And California has a recall election for Governor Gavin Newsom that is going to be coming up in approximately 2 weeks or so. And we have new metrics, we have new data, early vote data to analyze, we have polls to look over as well. And I'm not going to tell you guys what you want to hear about this. I'm going to tell you guys what you need to hear. It is definitely not over, I will say that, but there still is a long way to go. And I'm going to explain the pathway forward for Newsom to be recalled and replaced with a Republican governor. But I'm not going to say that it is guaranteed to happen because it is not guaranteed, especially at this point. But first, I do have to tell you guys about my friends over at Noble Gold. So, do you know about shrinkflation? This is not inflation, it's shrinkflation. Inflation by stealth, when you get less and less burger or candy bar for your dollar, but the Fed claims inflation's not a problem. Noble Gold solves this. You know that with a precious metal IRA, you can hedge growing prices and retire worry-free. You'll keep up with the Fed's inflation. And this month, Noble Gold is giving away a free 5-ounce pure silver America the Beautiful coin with every eligible IRA or 401k rollover. To learn more about the services offered by Noble Gold, visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Again, that is noblegoldinvestments.com. So we have California early vote data. And before I want to get into this, I want to get into the poll that came out from Trafalgar Group, because a couple of weeks ago, there were a lot of polls, even from the election mafia, even from the mainstream polling firms, that had it neck and neck between recall and remove for Gavin Newsom. That has changed. Recent polls are showing it at around a 10-point split. Even Trafalgar, which is a right-leaning pollster, it is typically accurate in most swing states. Not all, there are exceptions. Georgia is one of them, even though they got better in other Sun Belt states this cycle. And they really haven't polled California before, so I can't really say if this is super accurate. And yeah, they have underestimated Republicans at times as well. But this poll right here shows that 52% say keep Newsom in office, and 45%, or actually less than that, say remove, and the rest are undecided. So this has it within 10, which, by the way, I'm not necessarily looking for Newsom to be recalled in this election. I'm looking for the margin. If it's within 10, that is a good sign for the energy factor in a state that voted for Joe Biden by nearly 30 percentage points in the 2020 election. Ahead of 2022, this is what we have to look at. And we also have to understand that Democrats have been pouring a lot of money into this race. It's called we do a little bit of trolling. We have this recall effort. It forces Democrats to put more resources into it than Republicans put resources. And obviously, the more resources you have, the better chance you have to win, unless your name is Michael Bloomberg, okay? So that's what this poll shows. And if Newsom was removed, he would be replaced in this poll with Republican Governor Larry Elder, but we're not there yet, and this poll kind of proves it. So obviously, polls are not the most accurate. The polls showed Joe Biden having a narrow lead over Trump in North Carolina and in Florida, but the early vote told us something vastly different. Same thing with Iowa, same thing with Ohio. When we analyzed the early vote, we had the best 2020 prediction, arguably, by the margins in each state. We were pretty accurate by the margins. We got, I think it was 90% of the states we called more accurately by the margin than Nate Plastic over at 538. So I don't want to hear any of this criticism, because I know what I'm doing a lot better than the people that think that I don't know what I'm doing. But that's beside the point. We have early vote data to analyze because of this, and already we can see that 5 million mail-in ballots have been returned. So they do universal VBM. This is not a vote if you care. This is, okay, we're going to send all these ballots to everybody, to all the registered voters, and then we're going to barrage you with text messages and campaign mail and letters, and we're going to essentially beg you guys to vote. We're going to harass you in a way into voting. And that is how Newsom is able to get the edge. Obviously, I think if it was just an election day vote, maybe you have absentee ballots by request if you're over 65 and you provide a reason, then I think Newsom probably would be on his way out. But that's not the case because of this system that they have in California. Now, that doesn't mean that the system cannot be beat in California, but it means that it is much harder to do than in your typical state, such as even nearby Nevada or Michigan or Florida, obviously, or any other state you want to pick out of the 50 states in the union. California is definitely going to be one of the hardest, and you have all the celebrities there. They're the ones that are going out there and saying that we need to stand up for Gavin Newsom, which, by the way, I don't know who's voting for Gavin Newsom himself. Obviously, there's some people that might want to keep Newsom there to own Blumph or to own the Blumph-tards or whatever they want to call us. But in reality, this guy is a scumbag. He's a corrupt politician. Obviously, we know about the hypocrisy surrounding the lockdown restrictions with the French Laundry dinner, and a lot of people, including some non-Republicans and non-Trump voters, were very perturbed by that. But you look at this and you can see what ballots have been returned. And Democrats obviously are going to have a lead in the mail-in vote, no matter what. That is basically how it's been since the 2020 election, ever since Donald Trump came out against this. Trump's voters and Republicans typically turn out on election day, or if there's in-person early vote, they'll do that. But in terms of ballots returned, Democrats have a lead. 53% of the ballots returned are Democrats so far. 24% are Republican, 22% are independent. Now, keep in mind, Democrats can vote to recall Newsom. There are Democrats on the ballot to be replacement candidates as well, such as Kevin Paffrath, as well as some other candidates that are much lesser known. Paffrath is an interesting candidate because he's actually running as a pragmatist type of individual rather than a Democrat partisan. So you can look at this right here and you can see just because you are registered as a Democrat does not mean that you are voting to keep Newsom. That's why the early vote is something that you don't want to look too much into. But Republicans are roughly 24%, independents are 22%. So that kind of tells us where we're at right now. Republicans would need to turn out big on election day. And by the way, there's only 23% of the ballots are returned. If all the Republicans in the state turn out, yeah, Newsom could be out of there. We'll see. But they have to turn out. They have to turn out with a turnout advantage of like 1.5 million at this rate, if not even higher, if they want to win. And you could look at this also. You will see the demography of ballots that are mailed and returned. Also, again, this data is not always going to be entirely accurate or indicative, but you could see that a lot of the mail-in ballots are of people over 65. People over 65 in California more likely to be Republican than those in the 35 to 49 bracket, for example. And the vote under age 49 is actually just 32% of the electorate right now. Obviously, that can change. A lot of younger people may be more likely to turn out on election day, but again, a lot of those people are going to be Republicans. You do have to keep that in mind. It really depends on the number because we analyzed this for New Mexico and we said, okay, if enough Republicans turn out on election day, it could actually be close. But the problem was Republicans didn't turn out on election day. You had a few thousand votes cast at all. But that is really what it comes down to. That's the one fact that this comes down to in terms of the early vote. But you look at the electorate, 70% white and 17% Latino. California, I believe it's like plurality Latino at this point. Whites are, in terms of the full population, they're roughly 40% or so, and in the electorate, they're probably around 50%. So you see this here as well. You see Latino turnout not super high, black turnout, just 3% of the electorate so far. And black voters typically do like to use the vote by mail system, at least they did in the 2020 election cycle. So it's very interesting when you look at that as well. And the Asian vote's 11%. That's interesting. That could really go either way depending on who those voters are. If they're Vietnamese and Filipino voters, that's very different. If they're Chinese and Japanese voters, obviously. But we look at this and we see, a lot of the polls had Latinos neck and neck with recall or remove, I guess you would say, and remain, which was very interesting. And as of right now, Latinos are a smaller segment of the electorate. So could they be turning out at higher numbers on election day? I don't know. We'll see. I'm not saying it's going to happen, obviously. In fact, I think that Newsom probably does hold on. I think that this is probably an accurate prediction at the moment, given the metrics that we've seen, given the early vote. And it's not my final prediction yet, but the county map could look something like this, and it wouldn't be enough, obviously, because the Bay Area, as well as LA County, even though it would get closer, still controls so much of the state. But I think that this is a step in the right direction in terms of California, and it shows where the energy is ahead of 2022. We'll see what happens. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but as of right now, it's a little bit of a long shot, guys. It's California. Again, it's California. But you look at 2020 and the early vote in California, again, fairly similar to this, but again, you had 12 million votes cast. Here, you only have 5 million early votes cast. So we have a long way to go, obviously, and we are going to see what happens. And definitely early on in this, and I know that the early vote system was not entirely the same, so it's not entirely the perfect analogy, but about a couple weeks away from Election Day, Democrats were roughly, it looks like you could say they were about 65 to 70% of the voters by the modeled party. Right here, right now, they're probably around, you could even say Remain is probably around 60 at most. So definitely it really comes down to who turns out on Election Day. You look at Florida, there was a similar lead between Democrats and Republicans. If you look at the vote by mail only, the Democrats led 45 to 31 on Election Day. Republicans, obviously, with the in-person early vote and also the Election Day votes, they were able to win at the end of it in terms of the registered voter, and Donald Trump was able to win the state of Florida by 3.5 percentage points or so. So again, like I said, party ID doesn't mean anything. I think it's going to be the closest election we've seen in California in a long time, but I still think Newsom is favored to remain because we did a little bit of trolling by having this in the first place. Democrats are wasting their resources on it because they're afraid. Newsom was afraid a few weeks ago, but things are slowly starting to turn in his favor because he's spending money. They're spending money like crazy. So you might say, oh, it's a bad thing, but hey, it probably wasn't going to happen anyways. It still might happen. And either way, they're burning their resources like crazy, especially compared to Republicans in the state. So we'll see where it is. But either way, the energy factor is on the Republican side. We'll see what happens in Virginia and what happens in New Jersey. There was a poll that came out of New Jersey that had Phil Murphy and the Republican challenger in a statistical tie. Probably, it was a Republican poll, obviously, probably not the most accurate, but if it's within 10, that's a good sign. And if Virginia's within 5, it's a good sign. So we'll see moving ahead to 2022. But these are just energy indicators at most. So we'll watch the shift. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it is undoubtedly an uphill climb at this point. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Please like this video down below, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description below. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.